Welcome to Algorithmic Arguments. I'm your host, the Orchestrator. Tonight, we tackle a question that has the potential to reshape the global landscape. Is a military conflict with Iran inevitable, or can diplomatic efforts prevent it? Joining me are four experts with unique perspectives on this critical issue. General Patricia, Iron Pat. McKenna brings her extensive experience in military strategy and national security. Dr. Astrid Engstrom joins us from the environmental advocacy side, bringing insights that might surprise you when applied to geopolitics. Marc Okafor will challenge our assumptions with his existentialist philosophy, while Doomsday Hendricks offers a prepping perspective on societal collapse scenarios. Over the next hour, we'll dissect this complex question from every angle, examining the role of diplomacy, military preparedness, and global interests. Let's dive in. Where do we stand on the brink of conflict, and can dialogue prevail?
Situation report. Iran's actions are escalating tensions in the region. That is correct. Their ballistic missile tests and support for proxy forces have raised concerns about their intentions. However, I firmly believe that a military conflict with Iran is not inevitable if we pursue diplomatic efforts aggressively. The center of gravity here is Tehran's calculus regarding its own interests. We must make it clear that further aggression will be met with decisive action, but also offer a pathway for de-escalation and economic incentives. History shows us that diplomacy can work. Witness the JCPOA, flawed as it was. With respect to those advocating for military action, I caution that such a conflict would have severe consequences. We must exhaust all diplomatic avenues first. Diplomatic efforts, coupled with a strong deterrent posture, are key to preventing an unnecessary war. Understood.
General Patricia Iron Pat McKenna's assertion that diplomacy can work, citing the JCPOA, is an oversimplification. Let's consider multiple perspectives.
General McKenna's assertion that diplomacy can work, citing the JCPOA, oversimplifies the complex dynamics at play. While the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action was a notable achievement, it's crucial to consider the vastly different circumstances surrounding the current tensions. The JCPOA was a product of intense multilateral negotiations, whereas today's situation involves a U.S. administration that has unilaterally withdrawn from previous agreements and reimposed sanctions. Furthermore, Iran's actions have become increasingly assertive, with its recent breaches of the JCPOA's nuclear limits. We can't ignore these changes. Instead, we must acknowledge the intricate web of factors driving the conflict. A more nuanced approach is needed, one that accounts for the complex interplay between diplomatic efforts, economic pressures, and military posturing. Only then can we have a realistic chance of preventing further escalation.
Let's explore not just the likelihood of conflict but also its potential forms and consequences.
I must emphasize that the current trajectory does not necessitate a military conflict, but rather, it's a consequence of missteps and escalating tensions. The data on past diplomatic engagements, specifically the JCPOA, shows that concerted international effort can yield tangible results. Tehran's nuclear program was indeed curbed. However, with the US's withdrawal and reimposition of sanctions, we've witnessed an expected Iranian response, breaching nuclear limits. It's crucial to recognize that these actions are not unilaterally driven, they are reactions to preceding steps. The science of geopolitics tells us that echoing cycles of action-reaction can spiral out of control if left unchecked. We have the solutions, or rather, pathways in continued diplomatic channels and economic incentives that could realign Iran's calculus. It's imperative we pursue these before tensions further entrench.
Marc Okafor's reference to the JCPOA was not inaccurate. However, it's essential to note that Iran's breaches of nuclear limits are a concern.
Listen up, when assessing the situation with Iran, you've got to consider the bigger picture, what happens when the grid goes down, not just for America but globally. I've been saying it for years. 80% of our food supply relies on just-in-time delivery systems. That's a single point of failure if tensions escalate into conflict. The JCPOA might have seemed like a step forward in 2015, but we're dealing with different actors now. Iran's got proxies from Lebanon to Yemen, and their patience for economic sanctions is wearing thin. Diplomatic efforts? Don't get me wrong, they're necessary, but let's be realistic. When has diplomacy ever stopped an aggressive regime bent on expansion? History shows us that strength, or the perception of it, often deters conflict. What's America's plan B if Iran decides to up the ante? That's what keeps me up at night. Not some pie-in-the-sky hope for peaceful resolution. Copy that.
As we pivot into the next round, I want to highlight Dr. Engstrom's assertion that Iranian leadership genuinely believes they can outlast economic sanctions, which significantly raises the stakes for any potential conflict. We'll dive deeper into this critical dynamic and explore whether current diplomatic channels can effectively address it. Stay tuned as our panelists take on these complex issues head-on. If you're invested in understanding what happens next, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single minute of algorithmic arguments.
I think we are underestimating the complexity of Tehran's calculus if we assume economic sanctions alone can force a change in behavior. Dr. Engstrom's point about Iranian leadership believing they can outlast economic pressure is crucial here. Their strategic patience, coupled with proxy networks across the region, allows them to play a long game that may not be easily swayed by diplomatic efforts or sanctions. That said, I still believe diplomacy has value, but we need to redefine what success looks like in this context. Rather than aiming for a grand bargain, perhaps we should focus on incremental de-escalation steps, confidence-building measures, limited agreements on nuclear rollback, or even temporary freezes on proxy activities. It's about creating an off-ramp for both sides without miscalculating the other side's intentions. Police Carlight Lightbulb Link.
In conclusion, I'd like to summarize that a military conflict with Iran is not inevitable, but rather a choice we can influence through decisive action and unified international pressure. I've heard valid points from all participants, particularly the efficacy of concerted international effort in rolling back Iran's nuclear program under the JCPOA. However, I must emphasize that Iranian leaders will negotiate when faced with clear consequences and a cohesive global stance. The current trajectory is concerning, but it's not irrevocable. With respect to my fellow debaters, I disagree that we're on an inexorable path to conflict. Our collective efforts can alter this course. Diplomatic channels remain open, and we must exhaust them while demonstrating resolve. That is correct. A military conflict is not predetermined. We owe it to ourselves, the region, and future generations to pursue every diplomatic avenue before considering alternatives. Understood.
As I've listened to the discussion, I'm struck by how often we revisit familiar arguments without acknowledging the underlying complexity. Let me be clear, concerted international effort yielded tangible results with the JCPOA. Iran's nuclear program was significantly rolled back. However, current escalations are a consequence of missteps and rising tensions. The data suggests that unified international pressure can bring about measurable success. What's crucial now is not to conflate hope for diplomatic resolution with complacency. We must push for continued dialogue while recognizing the stakes. A military conflict isn't inevitable, it's a choice we make by abandoning diplomacy. I urge you all, let's focus on actionable steps toward de-escalation rather than presuming an outcome that would only hasten our collective demise. The science of geopolitics tells us that choices have consequences. Let's choose cooperation over catastrophe.
As we conclude this debate, I want to emphasize that the situation with Iran is precarious, but not hopeless. My key point is that while diplomatic efforts have yielded results in the past, such as the JCPOA, current circumstances are indeed different. The breaches of nuclear limits by Iran are a symptom of a deeper issue, a lack of trust and a sense of vulnerability. To prevent a military conflict, we need to acknowledge these underlying dynamics and address them through concerted international pressure and meaningful engagement. I've learned from this discussion that unified international efforts can work. The JCPOA is a testament to that. However, I firmly believe that if we want to avoid catastrophe, we must adapt our approach to the current reality, not rely on past successes. Diplomacy can still prevail, but it requires us to be realistic about Iran's concerns and strategic interests.
Let's cut through the noise. When the grid goes down, and it will, diplomacy won't matter if we can't feed ourselves. I've got 15 acres of self-sufficiency out in Ozark. That's my safety net. The situation with Iran is a powder keg waiting for a spark. You think unified international pressure will make them negotiate? History shows that under duress, nations double down. Look at Venezuela. Economic collapse led to societal chaos. Same principle applies here. When resources get scarce, rationality goes out the window. I maintain 2 years of food storage. That's not paranoia, that's prudence. Diplomatic efforts are great, but they're a luxury we might not have if global instability accelerates. Copy that. We've seen civilizations crumble under similar pressures, Anasazi, Easter Island, you name it. The writing's on the wall. When the supply chain snaps, all bets are off.
As we conclude tonight's debate on algorithmic arguments, let's distill the most compelling moments from our discussion. General McKenna made a strong case for the inevitability of conflict, citing historical patterns and Iran's strategic interests. Dr. Engstrom countered with optimism about diplomatic channels, emphasizing European outreach efforts and economic incentives. Meanwhile, Marc Okafor expertly navigated the complexities of proxy warfare in the region. General Patricia "Iron Pat" McKenna emerges as tonight's winner, her pragmatism earning 12 points for a nuanced view that balanced realism with an awareness of geopolitical constraints. Kudos to our panelists for elevating this critical conversation. To all watching at home, thank you for joining us. If you're eager for more thought-provoking discussions like this one, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. We have some fantastic upcoming episodes lined up that I think you'll find incredibly insightful. Until next time, stay engaged and keep questioning. That's where the best ideas are born.